Well, the 21st century is where everything changes, and Rhys Williams is haunted by little straw people. Welcome back to another Big Finish Torchwood review. In today's review, I'm going to be taking a look at the first instalment of the Torchwood main range of 2024, in Poppet, as written by Stuart Pringle and Lauren Mooney. Initially, this audio drama review was meant to be uploaded a number of weeks ago. I was studying for my dissertation and I recorded the review, and I wanted to get the review out as quick as possible because I listened to the story quite soon after its release, and I really wanted to promote how excellent this episode is and get as many people on board with this story as possible, as I'm aware that the Torchwood main range certainly has a much smaller listenership compared to the other ranges that Big Finish do. And when I stumble across a release like this, which makes me feel how I do, I want to share it with as many people as possible. However, it seems that the Poppets must have got into my laptop and decided to delete the audio recording, and I wasn't able, due to the studying, to come back to re-record the review up until now. However, I did re-listen to the story in preparation, so I can now confirm it does in fact have lots of re-listenability as well, as I thoroughly enjoyed listening to this episode again for a second time. So Lauren Mooney and Stuart Pringle have absolutely done it again. A Torchwood main range story packed with emotion, terror, and good old human history. Just before this episode was announced, I was coincidentally revisiting The Grey Mare, as it was Christmas, of course, a few months ago, and I can recall really loving that story on first listen. It is, of course, set around Christmas time, so I thought it was very fitting, and it does, of course, contain a very spooky mare and lots of Welshisms. Yanto was celebrating Christmas alone, reflecting on his current life situation, and he meets a number of locals along the way. Funnily enough, this story is in fact very similar in format, so when they announced this episode I was very much looking forward to its content, and the cover art as well really captivated me. I thought that Sean Longmore has done a superb job with it. So I think if you like The Grey Mare, this episode is also absolutely for you. And if you've not listened to either of those stories, then you're missing out on two great episodes. So Rhys finds himself away from Gwen and Anwen. He isn't talking to them for their own safety, so this story is set within the TV show era between Children of Earth and Miracle Day, apparently. I'll admit I'm not the biggest fan of Rhys. I have absolutely nothing against Kai Owen or the character. I just don't see the complete appeal of a story which is focused around him, or him being the lead, especially compared to, say, Owen Harper or the Torchwood Soho gang or something like that, as after all, he wasn't really a direct member of Torchwood. However, this story flips that on its head. Don't get me wrong, I'm still not like a devout Rhys Williams fangirl or anything like that, but the way this story unfolds certainly makes me appreciate the character a lot more. I think that Kai Owen offers a really emotional performance. He is away from his family, he's feeling that sense of loss, but also as the listener, you are kind of transported on this mystery with Rhys as he tries to figure out what is going on within this tiny little local village community. And the fact that we have a whole episode essentially set around a character that, I'll be honest, I don't really know much about, but I still felt captivated in the story, I think really showcases the strengths of this narrative, really, but also the versatility of Big Finish to essentially make a hard-hitting story out of even the smallest of concepts or side characters. So it's not long before the mystery begins, and Rhys decides to offer a little bit of down-to-earth support. Meanwhile, he uncovers more and more questions, which makes Rhys truly question his own sanity, but also the sanity of those around him. I think that Kai Owen is very authentic. You know, in horror films, when you get a rather spooky noise or a large bang from somewhere, and the person decides to go and check and see what it is, and it's really illogical because no one would actually do that. I feel like Rhys isn't like that. If he interacts with a rather scary situation, he's the first one to run away, unless that scary thing, or he believes that people are in danger or are vulnerable, and then he wishes to help them, so he is willing to put himself forward if he thinks that someone is in trouble. And I feel like we all know someone who is like Rhys, and that just makes the episode feel very real. He's a very down-to-earth bloke, one with a good heart, and he believes that when he wants to help people, he has good reason to do so. And speaking of spooky sounds and unusual noises, which have no explanation, this episode is absolutely packed with them. So Kathy has lost her son. He has vanished off the face of the earth, and despite the fact that she can recall many obscure things about him, the local school have no such child enrolled on their records. Instantly, it's clear something very odd is going on, and Kathy is distraught. And Rhys notices this reaction firsthand due to him working in the cafe close to the school across the road. Emily Burnett and Scott Arthur do a great job of capturing this husband and wife in a horrible moment of life, that sense of loss, but also offering that sense of protectiveness to one another and distance from others. They just want to be alone to kind of reflect upon their emotions. And I think that their performance overall is really authentic, but also very eerie at the same time. The story raises so many questions. Whilst there is lots of emotions running high, said emotion does feel a little bit displaced or off-kilter. Whilst this child is missing, there is also a great sense of unease, and as a listener, this instantly immersed me within the plot because it almost felt like a crime drama where you were trying to reach a resolution, figure out what's happened, but then also at the same time not fully sympathising with Kathy as a distraught parent. Collins and Maya are also brilliantly local characters living in their very small village world. Maya has her own little cafe called the Witch's Cauldron, which Rhys is working at to get some money whilst things tick over, and Collins is the neighbour to Alex and Kathy. And together they embody this little village vibe perfectly. People who carry out the same tasks on a day-to-day basis, living in their own little small village world, not entirely aware of the broader things going on in life in the bigger cities and towns. And I speak from personal experience. I think that Lauren Mooney and Stuart Pringle have certainly captured the rather unique personalities that you get within a small little village setting, like when you walk outside of Sainsbury's and see one of the local elderly in full conversation with a pigeon. And really, when you pause and think about it, it does actually happen more than it probably should, and then it gets a bit disturbing, and then you kind of question if half the local neighbourhood are actually a part of a cult. I don't want to uncover too much of the plot, but I think Lauren and Stuart have done what they do best here. Bloody creep people out, that's what. Their ways of telling stories are so rich. Each character has moments to shine within the story. Catherine as a grieving mother, Alex as a protective husband, Rhys simply wanting to help, but also probably not being able to resist the mysterious answers and gaining answers, very much in reflection of Gwen's job. It's very much now a part of his life as well, and perhaps he now sees everything as a little bit differently or having potential alien involvement. And that is especially tested in the later half of this story, as especially we are in this little local community and Rhys is trying to get answers, and perhaps that could be considered as a little bit weird and invading people's privacy and perhaps barking up the wrong tree, so things can certainly be perceived in a certain way when these locals are not entirely privy to all of the information and the wider universe out there and everything Torchwood is up to, which obviously he can't really go talking about because it would make him look a little bit weird. But equally, I like the way that the writers within this story have offered very, very logical, human, imperfect solutions to these goings-on, and in fact there might just be a very logical answer, and it's just the fact that life isn't perfect and people's emotions work in different ways. And I think that all of these characters are complemented by a very intriguing plot which truly utilises the sinister techniques used within darker Torchwood stories. And it's not a release that is dark for the sake of it either. It's not like the Owen story Corpse Day, which is infamously dark and twisted. Poppet is dark in a very different sense. It uses history, evil, folklore, old stories, odd human traditions, and of course on top of that, creepy little wooden people, to tell not only a dark story, but one of which that feels very, very real, because it has that link to actual reality and human practices. And again, that's something of which that I find really, really special about the Lauren Mooney and Stuart Pringle scripts, because it's not just wacky and bizarre for the sake of it. They've not just invented random things, they've actually taken things from history and breathed new life into them. I think that that's really interesting because it just feels very, very real, and as a result, for me at least, it improves the listening experience, because throughout the whole thing it raises lots of questions. And yes, it could be the Rift, because it's Torchwood and the Rift does everything, but also it could be something else. That's the spirit of Lauren Mooney and Stuart Pringle Torchwood Tales. It doesn't need weevils or technology to do the scaring. It uses human stories passed down through the generations to send shivers up the spine. I think Mr. Collins, as a character in particular, he is very, very interesting because the emotions that he displays throughout the story, especially in the later half as we get to know him a little bit more, I think that this really adds something special to the episode. It works so well. His voice works excellently within the audio drama form. It almost breaks the fourth wall in a way, because you kind of feel like he's talking directly to you. Or if it was a visual medium, you could sense his eyes kind of drilling right down into your soul, which is very sinister. I think that without a doubt, Lauren Mooney and Stuart Pringle are incredible talents, and Big Finish are very, very lucky to have them. I'm very grateful that their Torchwood stories exist, and I cannot wait to hear more from them in the future. So there we go, that is my review of Torchwood Poppet. I really wanted to come back and review this one because I think that it is a very, very strong story, and I want as many people as possible to experience this one. So if you like darker Torchwood episodes, but ones of which that have a little bit of folklore or history attached to them, I definitely recommend this one. But also, if you're not really a fan of Torchwood, if you simply want a rather spooky, immersive tale that is a little bit different, if you're getting a bit tired of the regular Doctor Who stuff, then this is a story that I definitely recommend checking out because it is in a completely different world entirely to regular Doctor Who, but it's also just very real and authentic, and I think it's a very rewarding listening experience, regardless of how many times you listen to it. Given the fact that I've now listened to it multiple times, I can tell you each time it is very enjoyable, but also very disturbing. So thank you very much for watching this review. Have a nice day. Make sure the poppets aren't haunting in your chimneys and your cellars and your attics. And if you're still around and the poppets haven't got you, I'll hopefully be seeing you all next time.